Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. Very excited to be joined by Susan Drayton today. So thank you so much for joining me, and I can't wait to have this conversation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. So I love, we connected over social media and I love your mission and your message. And I just would love to hear your story of how did you come about to doing what you do today, and just share a little bit of your journey of where you started and what brought you to what you do today.
Well, for the longest time, I was in a place that wasn't my true identity. I was boggled down by what my parents thought I should become. And then society's telling me their set of rules. It was like everybody had this uniform that I needed to be in and follow the masses, that I tried all those roles, but it was never me. And I was also seeking love outside of me. But at the time, I didn't know that. Okay, if you can imagine that.
Yeah.
And so with a set of core values of rules of society, and then your family dynamic, which is totally something different. That's a whole separate show that we can dive into. They have their own core beliefs. And then if there's religion poured into it, well, hey, that rules the rules to a certain extent. Not that it's a bad thing, but growing up, you're being shaped, you're being molded. I was always in the survival mode, always in the survival mode. My parents are still alive, but I have a father that is very free spirit and is not afraid to tackle the goals, not afraid to go after, take risks. My mother is always in the cautious. And if it ain't cautious, it's extremely fear. She didn't have the support system that she needed when I was growing up. They originally were born in the Azores, and they decided to come and build a life here in America. So you could only imagine, talk about a risk, talk about leaving your comfort zone. So, here are these two grown adults, and here I am, and so with all of that, I then was thrown into working with human services field, which I felt right at home, because energetically, I understood them. I understood what they were lacking. I understood a little bit of compassion and a little bit of patience, but working with them, I always sat with them and said, what is it that you want to do with your life? And these are people that always had either some kind of a capacity of intellectual abilities to the physical abilities. But I always told them everything is possible, but I did it through the actions. We can take the courses, the lessons, certifications, this, that, and the other. In the midst of all of this in my adulthood, they taught me patience. They taught me that it can be done. But I wasn't happy. And I was in a relationship that was met at the level of when I was a whole different person. So as I'm evolving, my partner is not evolving. So I had to make a decision. And it wasn't an easy one, but it needed to happen. Once that did, but I'm going to back it up. What I was doing was my art. As a child, I was always an artist. And my parents were always telling me, you're going to go to art school. You're going to do this. Like they always were saying, we're going to support you. We're going to support you. The words sounded beautiful. The action, there just wasn't there. Okay, so you could just imagine the disappointments that I had. So that formed a different kind of level of trust but it was lack of.
Mhm.
Okay. I always had those, okay, I'm going to have to do it myself. Survival mode, the warrior mode. And it was like, you can't trust everybody because they say one thing, do another. When is this going to happen? But I'm supposed to reach out. I can't do this all on my own, but who am I supposed to trust? I couldn't trust anybody because I didn't know how to trust myself.
Yeah.
So because I didn't know how to trust myself, then things started happening where it just wasn't being built in a strong foundation. So I decided to go do the arts. I decided to invest it more in a different level. And through all those oil paintings, which I still do, and sketching and so forth, I was able to then decided I'm going to do this book. I'm going to do this book.
Yeah.
I don't know what I'm going to call it because I needed to escape reality because at that time I was going through a divorce. So that's when my Worthiness came out, the book. I was just doing the illustrations because I needed to go into fantasy land, escape my reality because it was just so ugly. And I was grieving. I was grieving through all these process. So once it was said and done, I decided to write. I'm not a writer. I'm like, I don't know nothing about writing. I'm always in my head with this imagination, but I took a wild gamble and I just did it. And it all came together. And I said, okay, it's done. I just looked at it. It's a hobby. It's done. I don't need to go into it anymore. Oh, but the angels had something different. So my divorce now is completed. My mentor says, so what are you going to do? Are you going to take a trip or are you going to publish this book? And I just looked at her. I said, what? She's like, what are you going to do? You can take a trip anytime you want. I said, well, that's true. So I said, okay, I need to do some research. So I started to asking the angels, okay, how am I going to do this? I don't know nothing about this. How am I going to do this? So I ended up going out one day with a friend and I was at a restaurant and this waitress said, in just talking, we were talking about stories and she goes, oh, I got my book published at Mascot Books. And I was like, oh, okay. She goes, take a look into it. So I said, okay, I did research. I did research. I said, okay. I ignored it, but the angels didn't. They kept on waking me up between 1 and 3 o'clock, nagging me about the book. And I'm like, I can't. I was so afraid because I was like, I don't know it. I don't know this. I've never done this. I don't have the support. I don't know who to trust. I did this. Triggers. I'm like, oh my God, that must have happened for a whole 2 weeks, if not more. Then finally, because my sleep was so interrupted. So I said, fine. 1 o'clock in the morning, that was the last time I went online and I looked at it. Okay, submit your blurbs and the whole what it is about the book and so forth and the images. I said, okay, I'm done. I need to sleep. I forgot about it. I totally forgot about it. Wouldn't you believe it? 2 weeks later, I get an email saying that they want it. They want to publish it. They want to back me up, this and that. And I'm like, oh my God.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
So I was like, okay. So I ran with it. And then when I ran with it, they did the whole thing and we were going back and forth. Do you like this this format, that format? Everything was said and done. I remember I knew it was coming out on April 4th, 2017 for the public. I remember being on the bridge, a Braga Bridge, and I had my windows rolled down and I just screamed, thank you, God.
That's
You know what I
awesome.
mean?
Yeah.
Because it was just so stressful.
Yeah.
But I also have been dealing right now with my own anxieties, and with
Mhm.
my own anxieties, I have to learn to put more boundaries in place.
Mhm.
I always heard the word boundary, never understood it. I always thought, oh, you're being mean. Oh, it's to design to keep people away. Well, let's dive into that. What does that mean, keeping people away? Not everybody, it's the
Mhm.
ones that don't line up with your frequency,
Yeah.
who you are and where you're going.
Mhm. Yes. I love that. Yeah.
So they're either going to have to step it up
Mhm.
or put them to rest.
Mhm. Yes.
And I've had to, and I still do, had to let go of a lot of people that I thought that had my back,
Mhm.
but they just loved just being in the energy of my company, and that's
Mhm.
sacred. My
Mhm.
energy, my time is sacred. And
Mhm.
it's not that I am above anyone, it's that I don't want to be in the survival mode anymore.
Mhm.
I want to be in that God flow
Mhm.
where I know who I am to the core. I'm
Yeah.
not ashamed of the quirkiness of who I am,
Mhm.
or the parts that I'm still working on, because it needs to still be worked on, and it's not having a time frame on it.
Mhm.
It's going as you can handle those triggers, because
Mhm.
those triggers are powerful, that it can spiral you right back into those codependencies, whatever
Mhm.
those codependencies are. And I I'm learning that challenges are equaling into opportunities if you allow yourself to sit
Mhm.
with this, this the stagnations, the fears, the uncomfortableness, not knowing. Sometimes not knowing is a good thing,
Mhm.
because you should always be present,
Mhm.
because that's the only thing that's real, is
Mhm.
this present moment. The past has surpassed, it's gone, bury it, take the
Mhm.
lessons with you, the good stuff. Those are your tools. Yes, you may
Mhm.
manifest, but you can't get so far ahead into the future because it hasn't manifested. You got
Mhm.
to be in that present moment at all times. Now, the question becomes, how do you stick to the authenticity of who you are and who you're still becoming?
Mhm.
Now, that is a dynamic that is very, very daunting in a way, because I always say it's like science and art.
Mhm.
It's your emotions versus your logicness.
Mhm.
How do you bring it together lined up? And as children, they can't express what you and I are at this level of the phases of our lives. So, how do children express? They'll have their tantrums. They'll have, parents will come in with, if you don't do this, I'm going to take that away from you. Well, that's wonderful that you can do that. And it's wonderful that your child can have a moment where they're having a fit. Well, don't
Mhm.
we have fits too? And don't we tell people, I don't want to talk to anyone right now,
Mhm.
because you're trying to go inward. You're trying to sit with yourself and ask yourself, okay, what's going on? Where a child I have to just go into this roller coaster emotion because I don't know what's going on. And I don't know how to tell my parents that I really, really need this. It may
Mhm.
not be important to you, mom and dad, but it is to me.
Mhm.
So a dialogue needs to happen, communications, when a child is doing something that in your eyes is dangerous, well, don't step in and say, that's dangerous. And I'm gonna collaborate, I'm gonna clear that. Like if a child is, I don't know, let's say they're going up a tree to get to their clubhouse, and you can tell that they're going to miss their step. And I can understand, be cautious, but if they're climbing that tree and they're afraid to come back down, this is where you need to be that mentor for that child and assist with, these are the suggestions of the steps that you may take.
Mhm.
Meet me halfway, you're safe, one
Mhm.
step at a time. Because as a parent, or even having a support group, they're not always going to be there. You're going to have to know when there's big time challenges, how to pause and just
Mhm.
breathe and be in that moment and say, you know what, I don't know how to resolve this, but I'm going to have to figure it out. I know that, but I'm going to have a different perspective.
Mhm.
And what does that look like? I don't know yet. And it's okay to not know. It will come.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Mm,
Yeah, so many things I want to touch on because there's so many great points there. Absolutely, I completely agree. With the child is that the biggest role is creating safety, but
yeah,
also creating problem solving for themselves. And if
yeah.
you're doing everything for them, then their brain says, "Oh, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to figure it
No.
out." And then we send them off to adulthood, and then they don't have the tools that they need to actually create a
Well,
life
well,
that they feel fulfilled in.
you bring up a good point, as when they go into adulthoods, lawyers love that age when they're transitioning into college,
Mhm.
because they were at home living with mommy and daddy where they programmed them. Okay, you need to do this, you need to do that, you need to do this, you need to do that, which is understandable. But but if you have a routine, and if you've been given these tasks as they've been maturing, and leaving some leeway for them to make decisions in order to experience consequences, because the best time in your life as you're growing up to be an adult is at home, because you can take on those roles and learn
Mhm.
from those consequences and how to execute them a little bit better. But
Mhm.
life happens, right? Nobody's perfect. Life's happening. Sometimes as a parent, you're burnt out, or whoever your support team is, you're burnt out. And I get that. Been there, done that.
Yeah.
And so it's, when they go into college, it's freedom.
Mhm.
They violate so many laws. It's not even rules, it's laws that can actually detrimentally screw up their college path, life, career, if you will. You know what I mean? So yeah, is it important to have a dialogue with your children and with the immediate people that is in your circle? And and the other thing is the quality of your circle. Well, what
Mhm.
does that look like?
Mhm.
How do
Yeah.
you know the difference if something is toxic and not toxic when you've been brought up in that dynamics, like I have been, of the toxicities? Not that my parents were bad, they weren't. They had the tools that they knew and had of their best capability.
Mhm. Right.
And sometimes parents don't evolve, but
Mhm.
their hearts, I want to say, is in the right place.
Mhm.
And as you grow, you're always growing, no matter what phase of
Mhm.
your life. Your life is a canvas. And
Mhm.
every day, you want to paint it in such a way that you never have to use an eraser. That
Mhm.
should be your goal. No regrets, no regrets. And it's hard sometimes
Mhm.
in keeping that balance. So how do you keep those balance? Well, first of all, let's start with the inward. Like I do meditations, that came into play in my life. Um, Being alone in solitude. I know not everybody can do that. And I had a tough time with that, being in solitude, because I'm a people person,
Mhm.
people pleaser, and that backfired on me. But I had to learn that there's times in my life that I am going to be alone. And it's not meaning I don't have my friends and the ones that I love in my family. That's not what that means. What it means is I need to just recharge my batteries,
Mhm.
rather that be a hike or a swim or go to the gym or painting or writing, whatever it is, yoga, eating better to elevate your energy force. You know, life is sacred. You're sacred. There's only one of you. You
Mhm.
came here with a purpose. No one knows what those DNA spiritual gifts are other than you. It was designed that way. Those are the gems in your solar plex, you know, and you need to invest in you, because you can go to anyone, you can go anywhere, but you will not find that love that you crave so deeply than the one that you have inside of you. And if you're a spiritual person, your maker, your God, whoever that is, you know, you gotta have that relationship with yourself, because that's what it is. It's you coming into union with the masculine and the feminine side of you and lining up with your Christ-like, spiritual-like, in the Zen of love, good. And I know people are going to say, well, I don't believe in God. Okay, so you don't. But doesn't love feel good? Jump in that. Jump in the flow of love. Feeling good, feeling happy, honoring who you are, where you are, how far you've come, and where you want to go.
For
Breathe.
someone,
Yeah.
oh, I'm sorry. For someone who's in like survival mode, because you've been in survival mode, I've felt like I've been in survival mode, and I've worked with a lot of people who feel like they're in survival mode. Sometimes going in and expressing that love for themselves is so difficult because they're so disconnected from themselves. They feel like they're just trying to get through the day, and they don't even have the energy to invest in loving themselves. Where would you recommend someone starting to dive into that deeper so they can start experiencing that love for themselves and start getting their energies up to a level where they are evolving and not staying stagnant?
So journaling, and I'll say journaling, and I know a lot of people don't like to journal, but everyone will find their niche. I say journaling. Journaling is you owning ownership to your words, right? Nothing becomes real, especially for someone who's in doubt. When people have a lot of doubt in themselves and they don't feel that worth, they need that visual. Well, I don't believe it till I see it. Okay, get out a book. Write your emotions down. It may not make sense. It doesn't need to. Just pour it out. When you're ready, go back, you look at it. It's going to visually help you connect with your emotions. Okay, what is this all about? Ask the what, where, when, why that happened. Okay, why did you feel that? Was there a miscommunication? Was, you know, what was going on in your life that you didn't foresee? What was distracting you? What do you need to be more mindful of? You know, it's accountability. Because in the beginning, you're thinking, oh my God, look what they did to me. They did to me. 9 times out of 10, it's not happening to you, it's happening for you. And in today's society, which really makes me really livid, is people are and have been more so now, I find, my opinion, they take the verbiage and they put a spin on it. Oh, that's not what that means. No, that is what that means. When you want to get to know somebody, you mean you want to get to know somebody. You're not going to distance yourself from that person. You don't do the opposite, right? And today's verbiage doesn't mean what it once used to mean. So if you don't understand what you're saying, it's because you don't understand what you're feeling. And words and those emotions need to be what it is. Don't make things up to fit the scenario, because then you're living a lie.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, I find that a lot of people do say what they think is appropriate to say versus what they authentically feel. Like, I think the biggest example, and I know women especially do this, is I'm fine. They're not fine.
No.
And it's that incongruence of saying that you're fine, but you know you're not fine, that creates that lack of trust within ourselves when we're saying something that we know isn't true, but we're saying it to appease others or just keep the peace or not create anything around ourselves. It becomes a major issue.
And the words, when you, because this, I used to say that all the time. I'm
Yeah.
fine. I'm
Mhm.
fine. What I
Yep.
should have said was, I'm not fine,
Mhm.
but right now, my emotions are getting the best of me, that I don't know how to conjure the words that I need to convey for you to understand.
Mhm.
And if I speak now out of anger, there's going to be even more of a miscommunication that is just going to make our relationship
Mhm.
go sour. But
Yeah.
when you're in that heated moment,
Mhm.
that's the key.
Mhm.
If you align your logic and your emotions, you've got it controlled, and it comes right back to knowing who you are,
Mhm.
you should approach it calmly. So as teachers do, and their curriculums, the first thing that they were taught in school when they were going through their curriculum of college career of becoming a teacher is, when you do assessments on people, you need to remove your ego.
Mhm.
Okay, remove your ego of the situation and only record what is going on.
Mhm.
So in other words, when somebody shows you their true character, that is what it is at face value.
Mhm.
Don't overthink it. Don't overanalyze it, because that's what a lot of people do. You know, they overthink it, this, that, and the other, and it becomes, you end up staying in that situation a lot longer than what you didn't need to.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's a big issue. And I think a lot of people see it through their own lens. So
Yeah,
someone says something, but if you always say something that isn't always authentic to what you actually feel, then you perceive other people to be doing the same thing. And
yes,
then it's like, what's true? And then it becomes this
exactly.
whole complex situation where you can't really trust what you're saying because you're just trying to put on a face for survival. And then now you're looking at life through the same lens as if everybody else was doing the same thing. And then you feel like you can't trust others to be authentic, and it becomes a mess. And
It does. And
yeah.
for
Hmm.
me, I always thought people were like me.
Hmm.
I always thought people wanted to
Yeah.
overgive. I
Hmm.
thought people would just do things because it's the right thing to do with integrity, no matter if they're in front of you or behind you.
Yep.
So that was a lesson I had to learn, that no, no one's like you. Why are you
Yeah.
thinking that way? Well,
Hmm.
because I don't know what else to compare it to,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? But the key factor to it is supporting yourself emotionally the best way that you can,
Hmm.
having friends,
Hmm.
quality, even acquaintances. You're going to know,
Hmm.
the more you do the work on you, you're going to know who's
Yeah.
for you and who isn't. You're going to feel it through the energetic
Hmm.
flow. And that
Absolutely.
is what we encounter first, is energy.
Hmm.
Because when I come face to face with you,
Yeah.
I'm going to feel your
Mhm.
presence.
Yep.
Then my brain is going to process
Hmm.
my emotions,
Hmm.
where I think society has it the other way.
Hmm.
It's what I saw. No, it's what you felt.
Yeah.
The difference. It's what you felt first, because then your brain caught up with it.
Yeah,
And
I
you,
would agree with that.
yeah,
Yeah. And I think
yeah,
the more work you do on yourself, then the more you can understand yourself, the more you
yeah,
can feel the presence of other people, the more you can
yeah,
understand the energies and who is bringing you up versus who is draining you. And then you can start
exactly.
setting those boundaries. And I think boundaries, like you talked before, they're very difficult for people because especially if you're a people pleaser, you don't want to disappoint anybody. But when
No,
you start putting your own work into yourself, you recognize that you're worth more than allowing somebody to take the most precious asset you have, which is your energy. And then it automatically becomes a little easier to say, no, I'm not allowing you to drain what I've worked so
yeah,
hard to accomplish.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. And energy is your peace.
Yes.
Energy, your energy is your peace.
Hmm.
And when that is so disturbed in so many levels, it throws you off emotionally, and then you start struggling, and then before you know it, it starts dwindling into the other aspects of your life, whether
Mhm.
it be your career, your finances, your other relationships,
Mhm.
your home environment. Then you start with the inner body, which
Mhm.
your health is going down the tubes.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah,
We're all
absolutely.
energetic. We're all energetic beings.
Absolutely. And one thing going off of that, adding on to that, because I completely agree with you. One thing I've experienced from a lot of people I've worked with is that they worry so much about how their dysregulation and their emotional turmoil is impacting their kids, because their kids are soaking in everything they're seeing and hearing from their parents. So they worry about, if I'm in such a place of turmoil, what am I doing to my children? So what would you say to those people in that relationship? Because that very much is the case in many cases where children are learning behaviors from their parents.
Well, I'm going to tell you what I did.
Mhm.
I thought by having my children not seeing what was going on between, my ex-husband and I
Mhm.
thought that was a protection,
Mhm.
that when I decided to divorce him,
Mhm.
you know, they were perplexed, not understanding why.
Mhm.
They didn't see his true colors of who he was, because I always, wanted them to have a safe place at home. So I was masking a lot of things, hiding a lot of things about, their dad. And so they really didn't know who their dad really was, in a
Mhm.
sense, because I got to keep the peace. I
Mhm.
don't, my kids, I want them to have a wholesome, you know, life in the home. When by doing that, it was the wrong thing.
Mhm.
But in at the time, I thought it was the right thing. So for me, it's conversation.
Mhm.
If you're going to have an argument or what have you, obviously, please don't do that in front of your children. They don't need to see that. But like, if you know you're not doing well, like I always used to tell because my daughter used to say this to me all the time: I don't want to be nothing like you.
Mhm.
And one day I said to her, I'm glad, because I don't want you to be like me. I want you to be better. I
Mhm.
want you to be better than me.
Mhm.
And with my children, I was not perfect. There's no such thing as perfectness,
Mhm.
because you got to understand, as a parent, you going back to you, it's that lens, that one-sided lens. I'm the giver. Now the receiver is going to interpret something totally different.
Mhm.
So I I'm sure they're going to look at it and tell you something different about me, how that felt, how that impacted them,
Mhm.
you know, and so I had to talk to them a lot, and just give them different perspectives.
Mhm.
And at the end, they have to come down, with their conclusion. But conversation is the key,
Mhm.
and always giving your children, your loved ones, that leeway to be vulnerable.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Yeah, I completely agree. I think giving that openness of communication is so key, because sometimes I find that, like, I look back in my childhood too, and sometimes emotions were not really open. You weren't just, it was kind of like everything's okay, and kind of shutter it. And it makes it very, very confusing for a child to be like, I feel something's not okay, but we're not really talking about it. So
Yeah.
what is it? So I love that. And just keeping the communication open and allowing both sides, like, to, express, I'm feeling this way, you're feeling this way. How can we kind of understand each other better? And I think that's a great way to approach it.
Yeah. And I think what's hard is the ego, keeping
Hmm.
the ego in check, because
Yeah.
as parents, I know better than you. I
Hmm.
paid for all of your stuff.
Hmm.
That little control comes out.
Yeah.
And The kid senses it. What do? They clam up. Oh, I'm just going to do what she says to keep the peace. So you're not really resolving.
Right.
Both parties, whatever the parties, need to be vulnerable. Now, me growing up, my parents, like I said, they relocated here to the United States. So now there's a barrier, an English barrier. They have to learn the English. They have to learn the new laws, the way of living in our countries here. So I had to live between both worlds, two sets of different rules. So when I went home, I wasn't really allowed to speak to speak English. It was Portuguese. That was my native language. That was my first language. And not only that, but all of a sudden I was forced to get out of childhood real quick into adulthood. I mean, they wanted me to resolve things that took a mindset of an adult. I'm like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what this means. What do you mean you don't know what this means? You go to school and you are learning English. I'm like, we're not talking about this subject.
Yeah.
We're talking about history. We're talking about math, basic math. I don't know what this means. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So they would get frustrated. And then it was, you're not good enough. You'll never become anything. You'll never. And I had those words stated to me. So at the time, it was very difficult for me with my parents. It was very difficult for me to see love permeate through them to me, because I always had to be in survival mode. I always had to learn. You got to do this. You got to jump on that. Never had time to process, soak it in, do what I needed to do. But anywho, it had its good factors too, because it taught me how to deal with things on the fly. But on the other stuff of being more vulnerable, more soft, more feminine, like, I had to learn that as I have been growing and still learning how to know when to shift gears, when to let the masculine leader come in, and when the femme needs to come in and be soft and gentle and compassionate. So that's still an ongoing thing. That will always be an ongoing thing. But the difference is, and you can't use excuses anymore.
Yeah.
You
Absolutely.
want better, you're going to have to invest in you. Nobody's going to do it for you. So you do what you got to do. Like, I'm always in prayer. I'm always in meditation. I'm always doing affirmations. That's my routine. Just like when you got to get up, you got to take a shower, you got to dress up, you got to go to wherever you got to go. That's your routine. I incorporate my angels into my life, my divine family, because I found in that is my salvation for me. That's where I found me. I had to sit down. I had to be ripped apart. I had to examine the ugly sides of me. And I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to see it because it made me uncomfortable and I didn't know how to fix it, But I had to learn that everything took time to get to where I was. So things are going to take time to get to where I want to be in the healthiest, best version of me.
Absolutely. I think those again are just such good points, because I think sometimes people think that it should feel comfortable almost when you start healing, but it actually becomes much more uncomfortable because you've taken all the things that haven't served you and suppressed them so much. And then once you bring light to them and bring awareness to them, you have to kind of face them in order to move forward in your life. So it is an uncomfortable process, and it does take time, and it's not a linear journey. There will be setbacks where you feel like you're going back into your old ways, and there will be times where you're taking leaps and bounds and you start seeing things very clearly. So there's a lot that goes into the healing process, but that consistency that you speak of and doing it day in and day out, and this is my routine, this is what I need to always evolve, is absolutely crucial.
And what's even better that I found out for me
Mhm.
is not just being consistent with my routine of what I do to keep me solid,
Mhm.
bring out the inner child.
Mhm.
Because this doesn't have to be so serious.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be so heavy.
Yeah.
Let your inner child, him, her, come out and assist you with this thing called life, your journey, because it should be adventurous
Can you
every
dive into that a
single
little more?
day.
Like, what does that look like for you to
For
bring it?
me,
Yeah.
for me, when I allow myself to let her out,
Mhm.
I start dancing.
Mhm.
When I start dancing, I'm moving that energy. When
Yeah.
you're moving that good vibe, sunshine energy,
Mhm.
you're seeing things different.
Mhm.
There is no fear. There is no doubt. You're in that flow of God or
Mhm.
your angels, the you flow,
Mhm.
you authentic flow. You're
Mhm.
flowing and things are coming to you. You're not chasing it. You're not forcing it. You're not
Mhm.
forcing somebody to see your perspective. No, it's about compromising, coming, meeting halfway, feeling the essence of each
Mhm.
other's beauty.
Yeah.
That lotus, let that lotus open up the way it needs to
Mhm.
permeate and give that gorgeous fragrance. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? The
Mhm.
essence of who you are.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I do think people get stuck in that, like, I gotta force this, I gotta force this, I'm not doing this good enough. And then you're almost counterproductive when you're doing that because you're almost putting up that wall up to what is supposed to be invited into your life. And
Yeah.
if you think you're the one who has to spearhead this, then you're missing that point. It's being open enough to invite opportunities to come to you and what is meant for
Yeah.
you.
And like, let's take the topic finances.
Mhm.
I think that's a killer for everybody because
Mhm.
everybody's like, I got these bills.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. But if you were to perish today, those bills
Mhm.
are still there.
Mhm.
So what are you telling me?
Yeah.
That you have a lifestyle that you like, but maybe it's still not enough. You would like it to go another level. Okay, you got those bills. Figure it out in a fun way. In a
Mhm.
fun way. What else do I have inside of me that I haven't tapped in yet that I know is going to be profound? But
Mhm.
I need to be patient with myself. It will come,
Mhm.
and maybe that will take me to that next financial level. And then I'm going to start talking to people that share the same views as I do of whatever it is that I'm cultivating. And then it's going to lead to one thing and then another. Then before you know, it's like, wow, look what happened. And
Mhm.
I didn't even know this was going to happen. I was worried about this and I was worried. Get
Mhm.
it out of your vocabulary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Don't do complaining, do more compliments.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
look and see how far you've come, good, bad, or what have you. You know what I mean? Just
Mhm.
look at it and
Yeah.
tweak it. Sometimes it's just a tiny step that
Mhm.
leads you into the right direction.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's I agree with you. And it's a tough thing for people who live in a set of negativity where they feel like there's always scarcity and lack. And that's again the lens they're looking at. Like, I don't have enough of this. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about that. And it's so hard to transition into
Yes.
that mindset of abundance. But it does take that awareness of, like, what did you just say? What did you just say to yourself inside your head? And then recognizing what your dialogue is. And I found just saying thank
Yeah.
you and again expressing that gratitude makes just the tiniest transition that opens up the door for
It
more.
does. That gratitude is very powerful, but not
Mhm.
only saying it, but feeling it.
Feeling it. Absolutely.
You know, having that gratitude, the feeling of it, and being in that flow. Because when you are in that gratitude and the emotion of it,
Yeah.
without a hesitation, a doubt,
Mhm.
you're at the present. You're in
Yes.
the present
Mhm.
and you're taking it all in.
Mhm.
Don't rush. The lights will be out indefinitely. Don't rush. It'll get there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But in the meantime, you're in the land of the living.
Mm-hmm.
Live it. Because I always hear people, my mentors, they were two males.
Mm-hmm.
They were always, this is my bucket list. This is my bucket list. And I got to do this and I got to do that. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
When you got a huge bucket list and there's just so much to do that it's overwhelming and you don't really get to do it all, guess who you're going to be greeted with?
Mm-hmm.
The angels of regret
Mm-hmm.
that were waiting for you to take action and you never did. What could have, if, I wonder.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is more haunting than a bucket list.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Action is everything. It really
Yes.
is. I mean,
Yes.
you can plan it out. You can try to make it perfect. And this is something like I'm a perfectionist and this has been something I've worked on, but yeah, when you're a perfectionist, you don't want to start until it's going to be perfect and you won't fail. So it's a really tough thing to take action. But this for me has been the biggest gift is just do it scared, do it,
Yes.
figure it out. If you fail,
Yeah.
you're going to learn a heck of a lot more than trying to be perfect. And it makes all the difference in every single aspect of life. Of just take action, even if it's
Yes.
imperfect.
And that's what I've been learning all along, that because I'm a perfectionist,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this got to be perfect because I ain't going to show
Yeah.
it without it being perfect. And it's like, it triggers me even when I do interviews and stuff. It's like, oh my God, what if my words don't come out? What if this? What if that? It's like, I get into a point that I'm just like, you know what?
Yeah.
It is what it is. Let it go. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Just go slow,
Yep.
slow and steady. So I'm always picturing the turtle. I gotta be the turtle. Just go slow.
Yeah.
It's still beautiful. Just flow in that rhythm.
Yeah, exactly. Which is can be hard for some of us in the north, New England and middle states here. For sure.
Yeah.
One thing too is like going back to what you were saying before, because that just reminded me of what you were talking about before. Is like there's such a difference between should I and how can I. And when you were talking about publishing your book and making that transition, that you had that like eye-opening of like, all right, I should I? And when you're waking up with the anxiety, and then you got to the point where like, all right, how can I? And that transition is huge because it opens your brain up to figuring things out. That's your problem solving versus like, should I take action? You're not going to do anything if you're asking yourself that.
But it's also the verbiage. Did you see how you just said what you stated?
Yep.
It's the verbiage.
Mm-hmm.
Once I started flipping the verbiage and I started asking the angels, I need help. I can't do this on my own. I've never done this. I don't even know where to go and how to start this. When I released, so you want to be connected, but you want to detach. And what does that mean? That doesn't mean you being cold. It just means don't control it. Don't obsess over it. Just as if you're in a restaurant, you put in the order, right? Your waitress, you don't know your waitress. You don't know what he or she does and this, that, and the third, but oh my God, you just put a huge order the way you like it. And you're expecting it to come back the way you placed it. Are you hopping on that waitress? Did you get it the right way that I wanted it? When is it coming out? Is it at a certain temperature? Okay, where am I in the ticket line? How far is long and how long is far? And you know what I mean? You don't do that. You're connected, but you detached. It's coming. So let's talk. How was your day? How did it go? And and then all of a sudden it's here. Well, it's the same thing with your life. You approach it as if you're with a waitress.
You got to treat it like a crock pot, set it and forget it.
Exactly.
That's right. It's true because again, and going back to that perfectionism, this is a hard thing. And this is something I'm still evolving into is not trying to control everything because you feel like you're trying to hold down. Like I always equate it to like thinking back like Vegas Vacation. I don't know if you've seen that, but the Hoover Dam has all the holes in it and he pokes the one with his finger and then he gets the other one, the bubble gum, and then another hole opens up. And it's like, you feel like that's how you're living your life. You're just trying to plug all these holes, but you're only one person.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're going to feel overwhelmed, but it's like, it's true. If you just set the intention, you take the action that you have available to you, and then you just let things work out, it tends to work out much, much better than if you could ever control every aspect of it, which you
Yes.
can never do.
Yes.
So
Because we all have the tools and the
Yeah.
knowing how and the skill sets.
Mhm.
Use it till you are still learning and mastering the next, and
Mhm.
have those people come in that you do trust and maybe you don't trust, but you're not going to know until you just let it be,
Mhm.
because you just don't know
Yeah.
what's going to come and surface and transpire.
Mhm. Absolutely.
You got to
Yeah.
be gentle with yourself. You really do.
Yeah.
And it's the verbiage, and not everything needs a reaction right away. I think a lot of people also, I used to do this, like talkity talk, talkity talk. It's like, knock it off. Part
Yeah.
of communication is listening
Mhm. Exactly.
and processing.
Mhm.
So let the people talk,
Mhm.
you know, and just listen and just check in and say, okay, this is what I heard. And this is what I picked up. Is it correct? Is it accurate?
Mhm.
And then respond with something
Mhm.
intelligent,
Mhm. Yeah.
because
Absolutely.
words are powerful.
They are.
Words are
Mhm.
powerful.
Yeah, and I think people downplay them a lot because it's the words not only to what you say to other people that stick. I mean,
Mhm.
I'm sure everyone listening right now can think of something that was said to them in their childhood that stuck with them.
Yeah.
And you replay over and over and over again. I know I can. I can think of many things that were said to me, and I'm like, man, so that's just how powerful words are. I mean,
Yeah.
we can't remember what we did on a Wednesday, when we were 5, but we can remember that specific sentence that was said to us at that time that made us feel a certain way.
Yeah.
And that's science. I mean, it all starts with a thought. It starts with words, starts with thoughts. We process that, we attach emotion to it. And then when we embed that into our body over and over and over again, it becomes us. And those are all those messages that we live with
Yeah.
throughout our life until we bring awareness to that again, to change
Yes.
that dialogue. So
Yes.
it's absolutely important that we speak to ourselves and speak to others in a way that we give each other grace, and that we allow for us to all be human and allow for us all to grow and evolve. And I think that's absolutely important.
And what also is important is mental health.
Mhm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
There are companies that say, you got vacation time, you got sick time. Sometimes you need to take that time out,
Mhm.
because you can't operate on empty. You just can't.
Mm-mm.
You're not going to be fruitful. You're not going to win in anything. Nothing is going to be profound if you keep on running on low batteries. You're not going to let your cell phone die, right? You're
Yeah.
always going to recharge it. So
Mhm.
why don't you do the same thing for you?
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think a lot of times that comes from people attaching their worthiness to their productivity. And
Yes.
people think they're only worthy when they're productive. And that is a really tough, I mean, I've been there, and it's a really tough
Yeah.
place to, I still, again, still evolving out of that, but it's a really tough place to be, where you feel like unless I'm adding to something or accomplishing something, I'm not worthy. And that's a really tough place to feel like you're only worthy when you actually produce things or accomplish things. So I
Yeah.
think that's the driving force for many people to continue to work hard and not ever give themselves a break, because that then is attached to how worthy they are. It's a really tough place to be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. It is. But,
Mhm.
life will always have its high and low peaks.
Mhm.
It's just, you really need to hone in your emotions
Mhm.
and really look at it and say, what is this about? What is this? What's really going on?
Yes.
So you're going to have to learn and desire to apply the word pause throughout
Mhm.
the day.
Yes.
Pause doesn't mean it's the end.
Mhm.
Pause doesn't mean it's over. It's just pause.
Yes.
That's all it is. That's all
Yes.
it needs to be,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, and it doesn't have a timer either.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it it just it just needs to be tended with love,
Mhm.
you know,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
understanding and patience with with us,
Mhm.
ourselves.
Yeah.
You know, if we don't have patience with ourselves, we ain't gonna have patience with anyone else.
Mhm.
It all
Absolutely.
starts here
Mhm.
and then it projects out.
Yes, definitely. And for anyone listening, think about how much time you actually spend in a day pausing. I mean, because I would say probably not much. I see you in general. I think people are just on to the next thing. You're working or you're on your phone or you're taking care of kids. It's like how many moments in
Exactly.
the day do you have to just sit in silence? And that's a true pause. It's a pause is not filling your brain with more information. It's like taking a moment to
Yes.
process.
And that pause actually brings messages to you
Hmm. Yeah.
for you to apply to your path and how to maneuver it in a more of a flow. You
Hmm.
know, that's
Yeah.
a form of meditation.
Hmm.
Just pause
Yeah.
and just let it come to you.
Hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I just think we're programmed to assume that, we live to work instead
Hmm.
of work to live.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. And you can see it, and I think it's only getting worse. And then I think that's why that becomes very much a big contributor to the root cause of why so many people are, I think developing health issues, developing mental health
Yes,
issues,
yes,
developing this just really tough place of living because we're human. And I think a lot of times society forgets that, and people themselves forget that they don't even give themselves enough grace to give themselves a moment to stop for a moment, stop and
yeah.
not continue.
Well, like with technology, it's going at a rapid speed and we want to catch
Yeah.
up to it when it's supposed to be, no, it's there,
Hmm.
but you still need to learn how to pause, when to jump in it,
Hmm.
when to jump out of it, and you're not missing anything. You're
Right.
really not. You
Mhm.
you still need to tend to your garden,
Yeah. Hmm.
you know. Yeah, it's nice to see what your friends are doing. Your acquaintances is what I call it. It's more of
Yeah.
an acquaintances.
Hmm.
They're not really your true friends.
Hmm.
Um, so really, what are you missing out on? I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's informational. Yeah, I agree it is. It's helped me a lot. I'm not going to deny that.
Yeah.
I've made a lot of connections, but I also need to deplug and I need to go be a human,
Hmm. Right.
and just really savor who I am and just love the beauty that I bring to myself
Yeah.
and just radiate that love.
Yeah, it's very easy to get lost in the mix, especially when you're
Yeah.
always plugged into people, and it's those energy zappers, this comparison,
Yes.
criticism, it's all those things
Yes.
that destroy our energy. That if the
Yeah.
more we're online, it's like, I agree. There's a lot of great resources, a lot of great support systems on there. But
Yes.
if you are filling your brain with the things that are zapping you, and that itself can become very addictive, even though it's not serving you,
Hmm.
because your brain starts wanting more and more and more of that because it is that survival mode and that's all it knows, and it's comfortable even though it's not moving in a good direction. So it is learning to detach from that and learning to feel what authentically feels right for you and moves you into a place of peace and joy rather than feeling like you're always on the go.
And
So
I truly believe too, the support system is
mhm.
really important. You
Yes.
know, people have a tendency, and I do too. Oh, I love you. I love you.
Mhm.
Okay, that's great.
Mhm.
But there's a lot of love languages. And for me, the one that is the most sexiest one is the one that your friends, your family, whoever you have in your life that shows up in
Mhm.
the worst case scenario of the moment in your timeline.
Yeah.
Don't ask any questions. They just dive in, beginning, middle, and end, and they've got your back. Now
Yeah.
that's a big I love you.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's that action is far more.
Exactly.
Mhm. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
I
That's
love it.
that to me is the biggest I love you from the
Mhm.
heart, is that
Yeah.
act. You got my back, I got yours. no
Mhm.
questions asked.
Yeah.
Talk about it afterwards if you want to. If not, that's okay.
Mhm.
You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And there's a difference because people will say, well, I'm always saving this person. Well, then you need to examine what's really going on.
Mhm.
Again, pause, look
Mhm.
at the trend. Does your friend need that help that's beyond your scope? What is the underlining dialect problem issue that's going on?
Mhm.
And then don't just leave them, but redirect them with resources.
Mhm.
You don't feel comfortable talking about it? Well, then don't. Write it down.
Mhm.
Make it look pretty on a piece of paper and say when you're ready to look at it.
Mhm.
So it's not so harsh to the
Yeah.
eyesight. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
And just leave it there quietly. You don't have to go into a discussion.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it just comes back to the awareness of what you need, what you have, what is around you, and just moving it in the direction that serves you in the place that you are and where you want
Mhm.
to go.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, I have loved this conversation, Susan. I feel like we could talk for hours on this because there's so many layers to this and so many things that contribute to a place of worthiness and healing and feeling like we're being our authentic selves. So thank you for everything that you've
Thank
contributed
you.
today. I absolutely enjoyed it. And for people listening, if they want to grab your book or connect with you, how can they do that?
Okay, so you can go right to my website, which is www.enchantedwingsllc.com. It's with an E, enchantedwingsllc.com. You'll get a scope of who I am, what I do, both books, Worthiness and The Beauty of Naya. Worthiness, well, as we were talking about today, it's about a dragon and the magic of Mother Earth and the fairies. Seth, who is the dragon, is at a crossroads and has to make a decision. Will he do it? Who knows? Find out. Get a copy if you
Mhm.
want. And then I got my the one that just got published this year, The Beauty of Naya, which is about gratitude and how
Love
to
it.
come together. And it's always a free will. And it's
Yeah.
in the scope of the realm of the mermaids and humans and all living creatures.
I love it. And I love that they're directed towards kids because kids need this from
Yes.
the start and then they can live where they don't have to do this so intensely as adults. It'll just be kind of natural for them to take care of themselves. So I
And
just love that.
yeah, and that's what I love about my books. It's another form of reaching out to children. I do all of my illustrations besides writing it as well. So I want to do it in a way that it's easy for the visual and it's an adventure. But
Mhm.
even though it's an adventure, it still has the substance that you need to hone in if you so want to.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Do
Yeah.
you want to improve yourself? How do
Mhm.
you do it? And it talks a lot about the emotions, environmental,
Mhm.
um, the body of Naya, which represents water.
Mhm.
And yeah, so check it out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll put links into those
Yeah.
for anyone who's listening or watching so that way you can grab those
And
books.
I'm also on Instagram.
Mhm.
So that's Dragon and Fairies 555. And I also have a YouTube channel called Susan's Adventurous Path, which I interview other people too in with their superpowers because it's all about what's your canvas.
Love it. That's
So
awesome.
yeah, yeah.
Love it. Sounds like great resources. And like I said, I'll put everything in the show notes so that way for anyone listening, you can connect with Susan. And thank you again so much for being on today. I absolutely enjoyed this
Thank
conversation.
you. So did I. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.